r/AskReddit. Teachers of Reddit, what was the most annoying thing you ever had to deal with in class? I'm not a teacher and would never want to be one. From the outside looking in, this is what I see. Teachers are overworked and underpaid for what they do. They have been given twice as much work to do and no extra time to do it. They spend their own money on some supplies because the schools are trying to get their costs down. No matter what their child, the spawn of Satan, does in class, it's the teacher's fault. Kids hit people, bully them, throw things at others' kids, and it's teacher's fault for not watching them. Parents act like the teacher has nothing else to do but watch and teach their innocent child. Teachers are teaching the future leaders of the country, yet get very few compliments, thanks, or appreciation for what they do, and don't get paid anything close to what they should be getting paid. Teachers usually say it's a calling to do this kind of work, or they just knew it was something they wanted to do, but the way they are treated, I wonder how many people will want to be teaching 20 to 30 years from now. They are also responsible for meeting all test requirements that seem to be forever changing. More than anything, teachers need respect from the superintendents on down to the parents of these kids like everyone else. They screw up sometimes, but it doesn't mean you can treat them like trash. Because not only do they deal with that each and every day from parents and administration people, now they are also putting their lives on the line every day they go to work from some kid doing something that wasn't even thought about when people my age, 58, were in school. Carrying guns and shooting people. It's a hard job that I would never want to do, but God bless them for doing it. Thank you all. I had a first grade student last year that would scream bloody murder anytime he was told to do something he didn't like, or when he didn't know how to do something. Most of the time his meltdowns were during writing and math. I remember one time I had these nice fancy writing goals that I wanted to start with the class, where they put their name next to the goal they are working on. I once suggested that he change his goal, since he mastered the one he had, and instant meltdown. I threw out those goals because his screams traumatized me. He would have a screaming meltdown that involved throwing backpacks, trying to throw down tables, and pulling on his face and ears. His screams were so loud you could hear him from the other side of the school. I used to just wait until he got tired and stopped, but he would go on screaming and moaning for hours. I'm not kidding. I was told that sometimes I would need to carry him out of the room, with help from another teacher of course, because he was probably 80 to 100 pounds. I hurt my back because of him. After that I would just take the other 24 students I had and walk out into the hallway with them while another teacher handled him in the classroom. This happened at least 3 times a week. His mom tried taking to the therapist, but the therapist wouldn't believe all the documentation I had. She said he's fine when she talks to him. That was annoying. I felt really alone last year. There were social workers that would help, but for half the year every time I called for help nobody would come. Towards the end I would have someone come within 10 minutes though, and if he never calmed down, the principal said mom would have to take him home. We tried to figure out what it was. He was so very smart, so we thought he could have been autistic, but it was ruled out. I honestly thought he was emotionally impaired, and another social worker did too. He moved out of our district after last year, so I guess I'll never know. I also had another student that was ADHD and odd, and he would run out of the room whenever the other one screamed. I'd have to write another post just for that one. But I think I got a little bit of PTSD from all the screaming. I was stressed out all year because of it. Now that I look back I don't know how I got through it. I want to cry just thinking about it. This year thank God I have the most amazing class. All year they've been great. I just hope I never have a year like that again. My coworker and her total yet inadvertent sabotage of my classroom for 14 different classes across 2 years. Let me explain. I teach in South Korea, where native English teachers are legally considered assistant teachers to Korean teachers, who are the real English teachers, whether or not they've had any training in English education, or can even speak basic levels of English. I just happened to end up with a woman who spent 5 years in the US adamantly refusing to learn English as my superior and in-class cooperative teacher, already a massive conflict of interest. She spent a lot of the first year interrupting me to discipline students very loudly and in a largely ineffective manner. For example, if 5 or 6 students were talking loudly, I would pause to tell them to be quiet and immediately return to teaching. Then a moment later, if one student asked someone next to him for a pencil, she would cut me off to scream at that student across the room. When I asked students a question to get them engaged, she would answer the question. She never stopped doing this, no matter how many times I reminded her that these questions are not for her to answer. She would also demand I teach phonics, because my accent is better, but then chant more loudly than me, so that students couldn't focus on my mouth or pronunciation. The second year I worked with her, she largely did nothing, mostly sleeping or walking out of the room, or letting her cell phone go off, or cleaning around me. She sabotaged me, even when I wasn't around. I worked hard to develop discipline systems and train students to respond to English questions in English, to engage with the material, to pay attention, to respect me, and not talk while I'm talking. When I was out of the room, she put the kids on a short leash and forced them to expect hand-holding and constant translation so heavy that they had no chance to even listen to English words anymore. If they talked, she talked louder, even though no one was listening to her 20-minute Korean lectures about the complicated nuances of adding ed to a verb. One time I had students who kept making offensive jokes and laughing, both at me and at other students. I knew I couldn't resort their seats without there being a problem. So I told them to sit in the same seats as in their homeroom class. I did so, after telling my coworker to seat them this way, after she agreed to do so, and then did not do so. They moaned, of course. She quickly told them in Korean, "Don't worry, this is just for dumb buigaks classes. You can pick your seat when I'm teaching you English." As a final fuck you to me, on my very last contract day, the day after I had called in sick to work, she rushed into the office at 8 AM, after I had already cleaned out my desk, to insist I clean out my desk. She threw out pencils and erasers that I was leaving for my successor. Then she barked at me to haul 20 or so books downstairs to the dump. The kicker is that many of the books were there before I arrived, and she was the one who put them there. There were 2 student copies of every grade's English books, which I never used because I had teachers' manuals and CDs for all of my books. She insisted that I had used them, and thus was responsible for throwing them away. Naturally I protested, so she gossiped about what a stubborn person I was in Korean to the other teachers, right in front of my face, causing those teachers to shout at me and treat me like a fucking animal despite how polite I had been to them the entire 2 years. I've been cheated out of pay raises and had bosses try to force me into illegal contracts. I've had a boss who screamed at and hit autistic kindergarten students before while illegally cutting my hours. Yet no one makes even a close second to the most toxic coworker or superior I've had in my entire life. May she quickly come down with a disease just debilitating enough to force her into retirement forever, so that no other teachers or students ever suffer from her aggressive ineptitude ever again. I teach middle school math. I once taught a group of 8th graders that partially consisted of multiple kids that seemed to just really enjoy being defiant. It constantly felt like they really felt it was them against me. The most difficult for me to deal with was a girl who consistently tried to eat things in class like pieces of paper. More specifically, paper she was supposed to be writing or working on. Pencils, erasers, highlighters, etc. The more attention I gave the behavior, though, the more prevalent it became. That being said, I had to try really hard to not give in and act so surprised by the behavior to try to take away the reward aspect of it for her. She also constantly got out of her seat, laughed loudly and nearly maniacally, shouted hi, insert name here, if anyone had walked by the classroom that she saw through a window. When I wouldn't give her the attention she wanted for behavior like this, she would get mad at me and threaten to report me, so I would get fired and not teach anymore. Once, she even stormed out of class without permission to try to do this. Thankfully, administration was well aware of her struggles and on my side in these scenarios. The hardest part of all of this, though, and what will forever haunt me, is knowing that she suffered from severe depression. The behaviors listed above were her manifesting that. It broke my heart every day. I tried really hard to be there for her, check in with her daily, and just be kind to her, no matter how disruptive or out of control it felt she was being in class. The heartache I will forever feel at having not been able to get through to her and help her understand that I was there for her will forever be the one of most difficult things I will ever deal with as a teacher. I'm a computer science teacher, which many of the other teachers confuse with tech support. I'll be in the middle of a lesson and a teacher will walk in with their district issued laptop and want me to figure out why they can't connect to the Wi-Fi. I'm not in control of the Wi-Fi, do not have the super secret Wi-Fi password, and am not an internet wizard. Other times teachers will send their laptop in the hands of a student, and the student is even more clueless about what's wrong. The kid will show up mid-lesson and shove the laptop into my arms and say, "Ms. Watts, her face says this isn't working. Can you fix it?" The worst one, however, was when a teacher knocked on my door in the middle of class. One of my door greeter students answered, and the teacher stormed into the room past the kid, got into my face, and yelled at me for a good 30 seconds because, in her mind, I had blocked the YouTube video she had planned on showing to her students, ruining her lesson for the day. All of my students are speechless, and when she finally stops, I just calmly say, "I don't have the authority to block YouTube videos or any other website. I'm just the computer teacher." She continued to argue with me for a brief moment, and eventually I gleaned from her ramblings that, you guessed it, the fucking video wasn't even blocked. She just wasn't connected to the goddamn Wi-Fi. This garbage fire should have been extinguished a few years ago when our school hired a teacher trainer who exclusively deals with educational technology. Our school has a one-to-one iPad program. Every kid has a school-issued iPad, and it's good to have her around as when a teacher barges into my room I can usually direct them to her. She has no students, teaches no classes, and is basically available to help all day every day. Still, teachers bring me their computers pretty frequently. Some even bring me their personal cell phone, usually asking, "You know how to fix phones, right?" Why the fuck would I know how to fix phones? One even brought her personally owned expensive DSLR camera and wanted to know if I could fix it. Why the fuck would I know how to fix a camera? Edit. Oh, I do know how to fix most minor issues with these things, but I'm not the free electronics repairman. Don't bring me your electronics hoping I'll fix them for free. Yeah, cheap PPP. Hell is other teachers. This was far more than annoying. I have had 2 mentally ill students in a regular edition classroom. I call them mentally ill because after all the thousands of children I have met as a substitute teacher, these 2 were on the extreme edge of any behavior I've ever seen. Their meltdowns were worse than anything I've ever seen happen in a special edition classroom, let alone a regular class, and there's a good chance their meltdowns were worse because I was the only adult there to help them. I had no aid, and certainly didn't have any specially trained aid for them the way so many social edition kids do. I've never been trained in calming techniques for the mentally ill, but this is the norm for most teachers. They don't get training in that. Think mental illness in his isn't real? Here's a quote from NAMI. Approximately 1 in 5 youth aged 13 to 18, 21.4%, experiences a severe mental disorder at some point during their life. For children aged 8 to 15, the estimate is 13%. Both of these children were at schools that were not prepared to deal with children with such special needs. One was a rural school, simply short on child psychologists. The other was a city school with totally incompetent administrators and no counselor. So, since there were no counselors or mental health pros at these schools, there was no expert to call when the kids melted down. I was on my own. I did call for help at the rural school, and they sent someone to take the melting down child to someone she was familiar with. I'm sure the stranger danger of me being a sub was one of her triggers. The foot teacher warned me that might happen. But at the other school, there was no one. I asked for advice on dealing with the melting down child and all my peers and supervisors suggested was prison-like discipline. I guess this is a strange thing to think, but when you see a child going crazy like this, you understand why, in ancient times, people thought the mentally ill were possessed by demons. The extreme overreactions of tears, crying, screaming, and throwing things when it's just a normal day and they're in the same old classroom, doing the same old tasks, and you're trying to talk to them in a calm voice with oceans of patience so the other kids can get their work done too and not deal with 30 minutes of tantrums coming from a 6 to 11-year-old. To say it was baffling is an understatement. I hope I never have to deal with such problems alone ever again. And yup, I wish times like these were on YouTube, with all the kids' faces blurred out of course, but all the sounds still there, so that parents could see that this is what some teachers deal with. Teachers are the first responders to mental illness in children. But no one gives them credit, or extra pay, for that. Students who think they've discovered a massive cheat code to not doing work in class. Examples. Say you can't get to Google Docs because Wi-Fi isn't working when you've actually just switched the Wi-Fi button into the off position. This is just one example. Manufacturing fake technical issues is a whole topic. Bonus points for the fact that you now get to tell parents that your computer doesn't work and I wouldn't help you fix it. Constantly tell your parents that you've turned in all your work, but the teacher just isn't grading it. Insist that this is true even as I'm talking to your parents in front of you. Just lie about me right to my face. Say you're about to get started every time I come over to see how much you've gotten done. Hope I get distracted by the other 25 students in the room enough that this will carry you through the period. Just cheat blatantly. Cheating seems to have been completely normalized among students now. Say you feel uncomfortable when I come over to check your work. Go to the school counselor and say you think I'm staring at you. Tell your parents this. Wait until I'm busy helping the special needs student to raise your hand, because you know I'll say wait and won't immediately drop everything to come over to you. Cry tearfully to your parents that you asked for help, but that I refused to come over. Just pretend like you can't understand basic directions. Ask me to work an example problem to get you started. Try to repeat until all the problems on the worksheet have been worked. When I refuse to do all of your work for you, tell your parents I refuse to explain how to do the problems, even though I've done countless examples. There's a requirement in New York of how much seat time you have to pass certain classes. Like you need 10th number of labs to take the science regents, or whatever. Some dumbass parents and students use all their sick days, let's say they get 14 before truant/failing, when they don't feel like coming to school. By February they are usually cutting it close and come every day. The annoying part? They come sick all the damn time. I've had kids go to the ER with the flu at night, show up to school with a mask and 103 fever the next morning. Or they have some vomiting bug and jump up, take the trash can, and bolt in the middle of my class. Or they can't see with pink eye in both eyes. Or they blow their nose/sniffle every 30 seconds. The worst part is the disruption then infecting everyone else. If you try to send them out they freak out, and parents call saying the school is out to get their kid and threatens to pull them out so they count as a dropout. Schools get flagged by the state for dropout rates. Other than that, it's just when kids decide to act all tough and try to tell you off. About once every 4 to 5 years I get one who decides they are going to try to be cool and put me in my place. Edit. If you have an actual doctor's note you get free private tutoring at a certain point from teachers at your house. So chronic conditions are totally fine and not an absence problem. Edit 2. I'd also like to point out schools and teachers are graded on how effective they are based on state tests. That's likely a reason why missing too many days is automatically a fail/issue. I used to teach high school freshmen, 9th grade. One day during passing time, 2 of my well-behaved students came into the class sort of nervously talking and looking at me. I zeroed in on this and asked what was going on. Kid, there's something inappropriately shaped in the hallway. I of course think this means someone drew a dick on a locker or something. Awesome. Go out into the hall and there is a hot pink dildo sitting in the middle of the walkway. I ask the kids where it came from. We opened a locker and it just fell out. Sure, that seems believable. You just happened to open that one locker and the laws of gravity just happened to fail at that moment. Got it. The bell rings. I send the kids to class and tell them to work on their warm up. I grabbed the largest wad of paper towels I could, wrapped the thing up, and took it down to the administrator's office. There was a kid there talking to the secretary, so I sort of stepped over to the side. She eventually comes over. Secretary, looking kind of worried. Is everything okay? Me, is administrator here? I found this in the hall. Secretary, blinking in astonishment. That is a dildo. Me, yes, it is. Secretary, hang on, I'll grab him. I go into admin's office. He cracks up laughing, empties out a plastic bag and takes the thing. Awesome, not my problem anymore. I head to the bathroom, wash my hands thoroughly, and go back to class. Me, okay, did everyone get their warm up done? Students, no, we've pretty much been talking about it since you left. Okay, no problem. I get everyone working, collect their warm ups, and start going over the problems. And that's when I lost it. Started laughing hysterically and trying to hide it behind a piece of paper. The students are all giggling and saying she's laughing. She thinks it's funny. Except, of course, for the one oblivious kid in the back of the room who kept asking me to explain. Yeah, kid, that's not gonna happen. Get a classmate to share. I think I washed my hands about 20 times that day. Last year I was in a classroom that did not have windows or air conditioning. It was built to be a counselor's office, but they forced 23 students at a time in there. 23 is an amazing class size in most circumstances, but when you are shoving them into the room so closely together that they literally have to climb over each other to exit, it gets fairly hazardous. I teach middle school. The smell was eye-watering. I would bring in electric fans, but all they would do is waft the scent through the room, especially if they had just come from Phi's edition that day. I did not have a teacher desk because I moved it out of the room to make space for the bodies. I did not have a chair because again, I didn't want to take up more space than necessary. That was almost fine because I rarely sit to teach, but it was so hard to maneuver up and down the rows of desks that were crammed together. The administration was constantly touting the importance of letting the students get up and move around in stations. Yet they never took into consideration that I could never really have more than 2 kids up at once without creating a hazard. But for all of that annoyance, the kids were amazing. They sweat through every analysis. They never once complained about not being able to change the format of the room. They were constantly engaged. They reminded each other to put on deodorant before they entered the room. And they were always polite when they had to climb over their peers to go use the restroom or go to the trash can to throw something out. It was a bizarre year of 90-minute blocks of the kids rooted in their seats, and they still looked happy and enthusiastic to be there. I'm no longer in that room, but I'm now a floating teacher. I go from one classroom to another, a nomad, essentially. This is because we have more classes than classrooms in our school, and teachers exchange rooms when they go on planning. How's that for annoying? I guess I have some crazy parent and student stories, but really, this situation has been the thing that has annoyed me the most. I studied to be a high school teacher, but had to settle for a job in middle school hell, 8th grade more specifically. One of my students this year is a type who has to say outrageous shit out loud constantly to get reactions from everyone. She is also sexually confused and tries to be flirtatious with everyone, including me. Being a young male teacher, this has caused me enormous amounts of anxiety. Here are some of the things she has said/done so far this year. Math class during the first week of school, she raises her hand to ask what I suppose will be a pertinent question. Instead, she asks me if anyone has ever told me that my shoulders are weirdly shaped. They aren't. At least I don't think so. Asks me what color my eyes are, and when I proceed to answer green, she says no they aren't. She then walks to the front of the class and puts her face inches from mine to learn that they are in fact green. Uncomfortable to say the least. That same week, she told me my jeans were too wrinkled and again walked up to the front of the class to show me where exactly the wrinkles were, tried touching my pants, had to shut that down very quickly, pulled out an entire makeup kit during a test, and was nonchalantly powdering her face when I asked her what the hell she was doing. Answered calmly that she had a party to go to that night and didn't have time to get ready later. Constantly oscillates between being a lesbian with a girlfriend, 100% done with boys, and gushing over a new guy every second week. Once proclaimed to the class that she would not give head to a guy until the second date. Also showed up to class this week with a second bra over her first one in an attempt to make her breasts look bigger. Spent the whole morning flaunting herself in front of the class every chance she got, then complains about the unfair dress code in our school. No one has ever been dress coded as far as I can remember. She has a laptop to help her write in class as an accommodation. Just yesterday, I had to confiscate it because she was doing some online shopping and telling everybody within earshot that she just had to get these loafers. These are just a few of the many stories I could recount about this girl. Sad, because she is very intelligent, but is constantly going for the edgy, over-the-top personality to get the attention she so desperately craves. Parents who don't care. I'm not a teacher, but I work with the school district, spend my day around kids of all kinds of age groups and grades, and I see plenty. You get the kids who are a pain in the butt, but there are ways to deal with them, or just get through to them with enough time and effort. Parents though, that's a whole other beast. Majority of the time you can count on the parents to have your back, want what is best for their kids, to be involved, provide, the basic stuff. But then you'll encounter some who just simply don't care about anything. Like seeing a kid come to school repeatedly in the same clothes, unwashed, and they have other clothes. Throughout the week you see their clothes get dirtier and dirtier with nothing being done about it. You see the other kids start to notice, make comments, and worse. You see how the kid tries to act like it doesn't bother them, or they don't care cause it's their favorite shirt, but you also see how it does get to them, that they do care, and it is a bother. You try to talk to these types of parents about something good that happened to their kid and they won't even give you the time of day. You try to talk to them about an issue which could drastically improve their school life and you get attitude, like you're wasting their time. It's annoying, infuriating, heartbreaking, and more all at once. This becomes doubly true for any of the special needs kids I work with who have parents that feel their child's disability isn't their problem, concern, or anything because they didn't ask for it, and school gives them a break, so it's my problem now. Had to spend 3 hours one night looking for one boy's mom who didn't show up to get him, wouldn't answer her phone, didn't go to work that day, and wasn't until the cops went to knock on her door did she finally call us back. After that she stopped talking to us completely, unless it was a written note that she would hand to someone then immediately leave. I'll deal with any bullshit the kids can throw at me all day, so long as their parents give a damn about them and want to be in their lives. But the parents who don't care and treat their children like burdens drive me up the wall with irritation. Oh my goodness, the commentary. Me, John, wake up please. Bill, yeah, John, wake up. Me, Bill, I promise I don't need your help here. I got it. Bill, I'm just helping John wake up. Just backing you up. John, yeah Bill, shut up. She's got it. Me, but it was like 7 of them in one class and they would all do it, and I hated it so much. It's just another way of showing disrespect. Mine were high schoolers, so it's not like they didn't know better. They can talk out of turn, and then when I called them out for it, they can reframe their talking as helping or not doing anything wrong, which is obviously not true, because they are distracting me and their classmates and butting into a situation that has nothing to do with them. They did a lot of that kind of thing, doing something clearly wrong, then trying to act like they didn't do anything wrong, and like I just hated them, and that's why I was calling them out. That one good kid over there is talking to Yes, and I haven't called him out because he whispered one quiet comment to a friend that I literally couldn't hear while you've been having a full-on normal voice conversation in the middle of my lecture for about 10 minutes now. Not the same crime here. I ended up quitting that job from being overworked, unhappy, and so ridiculously anxious and tense that my body ached constantly. It wasn't a good situation. Thank you so much for watching the whole video. Please leave a like and subscribe.